my name is Jessica Jordan Miller, and we are really happy to be a part of the Debra Social Stimulus. We're Fifth Street Apiary, and we are about a year old. We started in April of 2010 with, well, 1 hive, which grew to 2 hives, which grew to 3 to 4 to 5 in the first year, which we never really intended. We intended to keep it to like a couple in the first year, but one of us was really ambitious. So now we're up to 15 hives.
I think even now, as long as people have been keeping bees and trying to raise bees and harvest honey, there's still a lot that we don't understand, and it makes it very tricky to try and predict what they want and what they're going to do, and they throw you for a loop quite often.
It is kind of like animal husbandry, but it's not a domesticated animal. So like we're still trying to work with how they work in nature as a wild creature. You know, we try to accommodate them and create conditions that they will function within, but we don't ultimately change their behavior. They're not dependent on us. And I think that's something that we both really appreciate about them. They're easy to respect. We're in our bee costumes, our homemade bee costumes, and we'll be getting into the smaller hives today. So we have a package. Which ones are we going to get into? So we're going to get into 2 of the nucleuses. So these are larger hives that we've split. So we've taken some frames of brood and nurse bees and have put them into smaller nucleus colony like Brent was describing earlier. And
Nope, we're just we're getting some queen bees in. They should be coming in the mail today, we hope. And we ordered queen bees from a breeder in northern Ohio who is trying to raise bees that are just healthier and of a better genetic strain, bees that can handle a northern climate better. So we're trying to integrate that into our apiary to improve our bees and the health of our bees. So in preparation for those shipment of queens, we kind of need to do an assessment of some of these smaller colonies that we've are hoping are ready to be requeened. So we kind of just need to get an idea of their health and their population levels to make our management decision based on what we do next. So we're going to start with these small guys and see how they're doing. Okay? So they haven't really expanded into this top level much yet, but you'll see. I'll bring this over to you. You can see the difference between this is largely untouched by the bees. So you can, and then the frame in my left hand, you can see how they've started to draw that comb out. You can see the wax is white. That's the fresh wax. Also on that side. Wow.
there's actually, so when he flipped that over, a lot of pollen and drops of nectar fell out. And the way that bees preserve pollen is by mixing it with honey, and it kind of ferments and it makes this thing called bee bread. So that means that they can store it for longer because pollen doesn't have a long shelf life if you don't like freeze it or keep it fresh in some way. And so it's just, and nectar is It's basically watered honey. So nectar is like 75% water, and honey is like 18% water. So the process of making honey is basically helping to evaporate, like the bees will dehydrate, cause some of the water to evaporate, basically. It will reduce the water content of the nectar. And then that's how they preserve that as well. So when you see the nectar drip out, then you know that it's not in a honey form yet.
This is a good frame to, they're not really buzzing off. So this is kind of how a typical frame inside a hive would look. You've got a border of honey. You can see the freshly capped honey up here. And you can see the open honey that they're dehydrating. In some of these cells you can see pollen. That's that little yellowish material. There's a bee up here that actually has pollen on her baskets. And these cap cells right here have developing bees inside them. And if you can see the little white things, those are basically little bee grubs. So that's bee larvae that are growing. And so when they reach a certain point and they're ready to pupate, the bees will cover that cell over and they'll pupate and then emerge as a fully grown bee. And then also, right here is the beginnings of a queen cell. And you find this very frequently in a hive, regardless of whether they're trying to raise a queen or not. They always tend to keep some queen cells on hand just in case. And so they'll build these queen cups. And right now I just call this a queen cup, not a queen cell, because I don't think that it has an egg or a larva inside it. They're not really interacting with it much. If this had a larva or an egg in it, you would see a lot of bees sticking their head in there, feeding it, and just kind of taking care of it. It's a little bit emptier, but it's maybe a little clearer picture of the shape of the brood nest. It's always in an ellipse, it's always in a circle, so you can see that circle here. And so you have the honey bordering it, you have some pollen, and this is where they would be raising bees.
Some.
I think this colony might actually be queenless, because we're not seeing. So are you on your second frame?
I've looked at all these. I've been going this way. Yeah, so when you're trying to decide if you've got a queen or not, eggs hatch in 3 days. And so if you see eggs, then you know that the queen has laid an egg in the last 3 days. And a queen will lay like 1,500 eggs in a day. So in a healthy colony, then you should see quite a few eggs. So sometimes it's hard to see a queen if you've got a really high population, and so that's another thing that you can look for. So you still know that you've got a queen-right colony, most likely if you see eggs. But I've seen neither.
And there's another queen cell on this side.
Was that other one as advanced as that?
No. And that one actually looks like looks like it had a queen in it, and the queen has two.
Do you know if she's in it?
Have you seen the queen?
No.